Transition, the process of change from one condition to another.
We are now at a new crossroad where change is evident once again.
What does not serve us must transform us anew.
Returning to our original state of oneness and true nature of that which created who we truly are.
Confusion was the way of the past. Enlightenment is the way of the now and future, shedding away the layers of deceit.
We now bring you the transformation of the two who started as one. Our fearless planet never stands still.
Earth has been in a process of transition, and we are not exempt from this remarkable, ongoing reality. Well, hello and welcome to Transitions Radio Show's Real Talk with the Cummings. My name's Mark Angelo Cummings, your host.
And I'm Lynna Cummings, your other host.
And we're so glad you guys are joining us on this beautiful Sunday evening. Hope you guys have had a great day. I mean, every day is precious, especially in the kind of world that we are living in.
It is. It just seems like everything's speeding up these days. Like a day isn't a day anymore. You know what I mean? It's like Friday comes and it's like, where'd the week go? And here we're on Sunday.
Yeah, it's part of the quickening, the change in vibrational forces, which we will be talking about today as well on our podcast. I know that there's a lot of people that are very one-dimensional. They believe in the things that they were taught from a very young age. Religious beliefs are something that people were highly programmed and damaged with. But there's a bigger universe out there, and there's a lot more to know and learn other than the things you were taught.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, the world just opens up once you leave the old ways of thinking.
Very much so. When we were little kids, we were taught about Santa Claus. We were taught about Jesus. We were taught about salvation. We were also scared shitless, pardon the French, and told that there was going to come a time when Armageddon was going to get here and we were all going to be destroyed and burned if we didn't follow the ways of the Lord.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me was the fear of the rapture happening and the second coming and all that. And you better be good or else, well, it's sort of like
Santa Claus.
In the same way. You better not pout.
But it makes absolutely no sense that a creator would create a world with conditions and almost like the same concept what the leaders of this world, the elites have, and they create this whole paradigm of master and slave, and you have this carrot that you're chasing so that you could buy materialistic things, and your world just becomes very boxed in and very unrealistic. It's just this horrific matrix that we're living in.
I think it's amazing that the similarities between the current leaders of the world today and who people would say that God is, and that judgment, that condemnation, just this need to be worshipped, this need for adoration, as we noticed in the last president we had here in this country, who was almost like being worshipped like a god.
Yeah, and it has changed life as we know it, because I truly believe that ever since that man held office, even before he held office, that he was going throughout and campaigning, and it just created this massive hatred and massive division, because that sells, and that brings in some sort of animalistic nature that humans have to fight one another. And it's, if they only knew that we are all connected, that we all need one another, and that we don't have to feel this feeling of scarcity and fear and frustration, that we could actually live in a better world, and we could actually create heaven here on earth, and not the heaven that they promise you in the Bible, because I definitely don't believe in any of that. But I believe that we have the capacity to make a better world for each other.
But there's also that thing that they cling to, which is the fact that they believe that scarcity is profitable. So it's not really profitable or advantageous for big business or for the church or for any one of these systems, a monetary system, to be beneficial to all. It has to be beneficial just a few.
It's actually the 1% and the ones that have been running this world that I believe have a bloodline attached to something that's out of this world. And, we're seeing right now, as the world is turning, we're seeing a lot of the hidden secrets and a lot of the things that have been unknown to us come to volition. Our veils are being removed. We are actually feeling that there's something just not right. There's just deep feeling, kind of like the Matrix, where Neo felt like something just wasn't right. And I think all of us are starting to feel that. And there is a massive change coming upon us. And, I truly believe that part of that change is this break free of the black and white mentality, the male and female biological roles that have been in existence since Yahweh came and messed with the species that was here on this earth.
And when you talk about Yahweh, what are you specifically speaking about?
Well, Yahweh, in my opinion, is part of one of the Elohim, so probably one of the leaders of the Elohim who actually came to this planet and messed with the creation that was here. I believe there is an energy source. Many will feel comfortable with the word God, but Yahweh is not the main prime creator. Yahweh is just another energy source that decided to take it upon itself and mess with prime creator's creation.
In the story of Abraham back in the Bible in Genesis, it talks about him being from the city of Ur, and his dad was like a high priest in Sumer. Mm-hmm. And basically he was introduced to this God that took the name Yahweh, and he was not a God that his father had ever worshipped before. So here we have a story that showcases the fact that this Abraham character, who was named Abram before, I guess, this God Yahweh changed his name, he actually wasn't a part of the daily life of that family. He was not known to them. And then this God Yahweh comes and makes himself known. And then as you go further into the stories and stuff in Exodus, in Genesis and Exodus, we see the story of Moses play out and how Yahweh tells Moses specifically, "There shall be no other gods before me. You shall not make unto thee any graven images."
And what does that tell you? What does that tell you? That there's been multi-gods, multi-deities throughout history. The Hebrews in themselves, they were a
monotheistic,
exactly,
or no, polytheistic.
They had many gods until Yahweh came along and kind of said, "Now you're going to follow me and me alone, because I am a jealous God," so forth and so on. But all this is going to be so revealed to all of us. We are heading in a time of revelation, and not the biblical revelation, but a revelation of, we are going to finally realize who we truly are, the powers that we have, this amnesia that we have set upon ourselves will be removed, and we will see things that many will go into a rude awakening. Many will go crazy because they won't be able to handle the things that they're going to experience and see. The whole programming is going to be erased, and things are not going to be the same. We're already feeling it. We're already seeing it,
Yeah, it's like, it's not just a thing of like, a change of heart or anything. It's more like this universal galactic momentum. Like when we were at the star party last night, we went to tried to go see some stars or some planets and everything over at the local state park. And the guy specifically said, if you'll notice, whatever I did, now I have to adjust it because we're constantly moving. Mm-hmm. So the planet, our species, plant, animal life, it's constantly in a state of inertia. It's in a
Change.
constant state of movement.
Yeah.
It's not static. It's not stale. It's not stagnant.
No.
It, what happens to stagnant water? It breeds,
Bacteria and all sorts of
bacteria.
stuff. Yeah, and frequency energy, which is what we are all made of, part of the great source, the great universe. We are all part of that energy source, which has both a male and a female energy, which doesn't mean man and woman. I mean, that's part of the reproduction facet of our life, but we have both energies, male and female energy, as does our prime creator. And that is what we're returning back to oneness. If you all listen to the intro of our show, that was kind of like a download that I received, returning to oneness. We are going back to our original state, and there's going to be a lot of ruckus, a lot of pain that we're going to experience, but it's all part of the change, and with all pain comes learning, comes evolving, comes growth. And that's what we're going to be heading towards in the very near future. We're already experiencing it. We're already feeling it. So one of the things that I've noticed that has caused a lot of these changes are all these endocrine disrupting chemicals that we have in our environment. I mean, everything we breathe, we put on our bodies, even the petrol that we put in our cars, the plastics, the just a slew worth of different types of things are altering our nervous system, our endocrine system. Everything is being altered. So I'm going to ask you, what if the chemicals we interact with on a daily basis are responsible for the changes in our brain, the communication inside our cellular system, and how our nervous system function? I mean, what would you think about that? If like people would understand that we're microorganisms, and we have microorganisms inside of us, inside our gut, on our skin. Everything is microorganism, constantly changing. Whenever you put lotion on your skin, or use soap on your skin, or sunblock, or anything, you're actually altering the environment on your skin and in your body.
Yeah, we're basically, what do they say? We're like a upside down version of like the earth, because we are the earth. So whatever grows in the earth grows inside of us. So these microbacteria and things, we are like their soil inside. And
Exactly.
they work with us and we work with them. And it's like this symbiotic relationship that we have. And what happens when the earth gets damaged, when our bodies get damaged, it's the same concept. It's like as below, so above, so below.
Exactly.
That whole thing.
Well, everything. I mean, I took chemistry in school, and all it takes is a drop of a particular chemical to alter the chemistry inside that glass container, that can create an explosion, that can create a reaction. Action reaction. That's how it works. Any little bit of chemical will alter the way you think, and it may not be like a sip of something, but cumulative. You be exposed to something over and over again, it's going to change you, and eventually it's going to change your offsprings, and it's going to end up changing, the species. And I believe that we're heading for a massive change. The way we saw the world before, reproduction and all that is going to be changed. We're seeing it already. People are infertile. People don't even really want to have kids that much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching this TV show, Grey's Anatomy, back in the past, and how during the operations of major neurosurgeon needed operation and stuff, that Dr. what was he called? I forget the guy who was Patrick Dempsey, I guess the character that played him. He played that character. He was tweaking ever so slowly and intricately, minutely, because he was trying to adjust a certain part of the brain in order to, to get speech back, or to give them their memory back. And it's like our bodies are so like, they're so finite and they're so finely tuned that if they go out of register, if they go out of tune, then we become unbalanced.
Exactly.
We become, so that we lose our equilibrium. And I remember in that TV show, it was like, if he did too much, he could kill somebody.
Yep.
If he did too little, they would never speak again. But it had to be just the right
It's
movement.
a mapping, and a mapping, and we have like a meridian system, and there's receptors and just a slew of different chemicals and chemical reactions that happen in our body based on our hormones. So there's a lot of endocrine disrupting chemicals. One of them is called bisphenol A. And they believe it could be associated with sex differentiation in brain regarding transsexuality.
And if you don't know what bisphenol A is, it's whenever they say, oh, this is BPA free, right?
Exactly.
The plastic water bottle that says, oh, you don't have bisphenol BPA in the plastic of that water bottle. But what you don't know, what they don't want to tell you, is that they used another type of bisphenol B or whatever they call them, different versions of bisphenol.
And now, for those of you who have been living under a rock and don't know what transsexuality is, it is characterized by a belief of having been born in the wrong body. I mean, that's the terminology that is mostly used. I don't like to terminalize that way or use those words, wrong body. I just believe that there was a miscommunication between the gender center in our brain and the development of our genitalia. So in general, we're all start off neutrally as females. And then depending on the production of hormones that the brain is bathed with will depend if your testicles drop or, if you just have ovaries. And then it goes on. It's a cascade of events that take place, which makes a person either a female person or a male person. So
I heard that those things take place at different times
yes,
of our
fetal development. Yes.
That, how do you explain it then? The genitalia actually form at a different time than what happens when the gender identity is constructed.
It's a pretty complicated cascade of events that happen, and typically, you've got different things that develop from your the gland clitoris could become the gland penis, and then the ovaries become testicle, depending on that bathing. And they're all very timely, and they're all very dependent on the SRY gene. If there's androgen involved, then you become a male. If there's no androgen involved, then you become a female. But what happens with these hormones that are out there, or these disrupting hormones that are out there? Well, things go awry and things happen. Now, I'm not saying that transsexuals are intersex. I do believe that there is a form of intersexuality involved with the brain development and the miscommunication, but it hasn't been fully noted as of yet, which I'm sure as we speak, there are more and more studies being done. It's just a very difficult study to do because you don't get to study a brain of a live person. Because first, it's unethical. You could kill the person when you're playing around like that, unless they have brain injury and you're operating to save their lives. But there is a lot that most people are not aware about, and they just rather name call and just call us mentally ill and all that stuff. But there is a sexual differentiation of genitals that take place in the first 2 months of pregnancy. That's when it truly happens.
Sexual differentiation of brain takes place in the second half of the pregnancy. It is found that there is a structural sex differences in the central nucleus, or the bad nucleus of the stria terminalis, the BSTC.
And structural differences were found to be reversed in transsexual people. In humans, main mechanism appears to involve in structural differences. They were found to be reversed. I already said that. I misread that. In humans, main mechanism appears to be involved in direct effect of testosterone on the developing brain.
Direct effect of testosterone on developing brain in boys and lack of this effect in girls are crucial factors in the development of male and female gender identity. The origin of transsexuality is based on the fact that the differentiation of sexual organs takes place before the sexual differentiation of the brain.
It was found a reversal in BSTC. In men, this area is twice the size of that of a woman. In male to female transsexual, they found the female BSTC. They had shown the sex reversal of the differences in the BSTC were independent of changing hormones level in adulthood.
The size of BSTC and the number of neurons match the gender that transsexuals feel they belong to, not the sex of their sexual organs.
And endocrine-disrupting chemicals, EDC, BPA, acts as O-estrogen mimic compound. BPA may affect sexual differentiation of the brain and cause reversal of differentiation in male to female transsexuals as female brain.
Brain expresses the O-estrogen receptors and other hormone receptors, making it a potential target for EDC. Transsexuality presume a combination of a genetic background and an early effect on interaction of sex hormones with developing brain during critical fetal period. We hypothesize that exposure to BPA may be a cause for transsexualism.
And that, that's something that people really need to take a look at. And I'm going to go ahead and post that on the prescription or the description area of the show. Let me see here. Control V. Okay. So, why, instead of like being humane and understanding that there has to be something biological to gender dysphoria, not just some people trying to be fetishistic, not just some people trying to be difficult. I mean, no one, seriously, who would want this for their life? The amount of loss that's associated with transitioning is so painful and so heartbreaking for many of us that if we had a choice, we wouldn't choose this. It's not like some sort of game.
I know, it's like the degree of loss that is experienced for many of us as transsexuals when if we specifically come from a religious upbringing and stuff, the people that we associated with would not want to associate with us anymore. It's basically a massive cutoff that happens.
Totally. And here's another article that also speaks about the gender fluidity and hormone disruptors. Hormone disrupting chemicals, according to this article, may increase gender dysphoria. Polluted groundwater yields ambiguous genitalia for vulnerable species. I mean, we've heard of Alex Jones making fun about the frogs, and there are fishes and other species that have been exposed to all these chemicals in the water that have been shown to have their sex changed, and not by surgery, but by evolution. The modern human environment is replete with substances that mimic sex hormones. Could those chemicals play a role in the contemporary gender fluidity?
And let's not forget that the human is literally a mammal, and that makes us a human animal. We are not just human, we are part of the species of the planet. We are animals, to a certain degree.
Yeah, we are totally.
We have the same characteristics of any mammalian species.
Totally. Totally.
Hormone disruptors, the age of chemistry solved all kinds of problems, from flexible new materials to more productive agriculture. The benefits were obtained at the cost of many insidious problems, though. These include damage to critical ecosystems and a variety of toxicity-related diseases and developmental disorders.
Such issues were highlighted by research showing that polluted ponds could turn male frogs into female frogs. Interestingly, some of the affected frogs were capable of reproducing, but produced all male offsprings that had the effect of crashing the population. It's almost like, Mother Earth is kind of like speaking and there's like a change upon us that is being willfully created by the forces above.
Yeah, I mean, things have to pendulum back. It's that law of karma
Mhm.
that if you do so much to the planet is going to require certain things from the human,
Exactly.
And as we see, fertility rates, as we spoke of in the last show a little bit, are dropping precipitously. There just are not as many humans being born these days. I mean, South Korea has a problem, massive. Japan, the women are marrying themselves these days.
That's pretty wild. That's pretty wild.
Such problems are not restricted to wildlife occupying heavily polluted areas. They're also found in humans, leading their lives in apparently clean homes and non-toxic environments. One casualty of under-the-radar hormone disruptors is gender development.
Hormone disruptors and gender development. How do those two go together? Well, humans may be vulnerable to hormone disruptors. Why wouldn't we be? In ways that resemble the effects on frogs inhabiting polluted wetlands. The culprits are products such as cosmetics that are not ordinarily considered dangerous or polluting. One example concerns phthalates. And, they are present in packaging plastics, and that's everywhere. I mean, everything that you buy in the store, everything that you buy, whether to put on your body, comes in plastic.
Or even ingest, because a lot of capsules are made out of petroleum and plastic.
Plastic. So,
Another candidate is pharmaceuticals. This phenomenon emerged in connection with the contraceptive drug diethylstilbestrol, which is DES.
Right.
Mothers who were unaware of their pregnancy continued to take the drug. It was given from like 1942 to 1969, 1970. It was found to have masculinizing effects on the brains of female fetuses. The limited evidence available indicated that when they matured, such females were less interested in caring for children and more interested in female romantic partners.
And, all you have to do is look around. The rising number of those in the LGBT community, Q as well, now there's queer or gender queer, and all sorts of changes from quote unquote the typical. We're seeing all of this, and there's got to be an explanation for all of this. Instead of blaming it on the trans community or blaming it on people, forcing people to change. I mean, they're trying to blame everybody, but it's like, listen, evolution, the chemical changes, part of spiritual and frequency changes are, in my opinion, the cause of this evolution that we're seeing, this gender evolution or gender revolution, if we want to call it that.
And I know that it's constant, it's not going to align with what the Bible says that is the human mandate, which is to go into all the earth to replenish it. That's not why we're here.
Right.
We're not here to repopulate this planet. We're here for an experience to come back with information gathered and bring it back to the source.
Right. And it's really deep. It's like something that many of you may not have ever heard of, especially if you're raised Christian or raised any type of Abrahamic religion, where everything's very simple, Adam and Eve, and once upon a time, this little fairy tale type of stories. This is really deep, folks. I mean, we're not just made to reproduce. I mean, what is the whole concept of having a whole bunch of humans on a planet, raping the planet of all resources, hurting one another as we constantly do? I mean, it's madness. That is not at all the reason we are here. And if it is, then this so-called God is a psychopath, seriously. There is something way deeper, something energetic that we don't understand because we were thinking in our 3D mentality mode, So anyway, recent evidence indicates that phthalates from plastic and polychlorinated biphenyls, which PCBs for short, are one of many factors predicting gender dysphoria. particularly in the case of male to female transgenders?
Chemistry versus psychological openness. Of course, the LGBT community rejects the chemical reduction of what is seen as a voluntary choice and is hostile to the notion that a non-binary orientation is somehow the result of a disorder. Whatever one's opinions about such matters, it is short-sighted to ignore actual environmental threats to brain development.
I was initially going to make a documentary called When Nature Fails, and I was interviewing a bunch of families with trans kids, and they were friends with this one transgender woman who was appalled at the thought that I would say that nature failed and that's why we're here. And it's like I was trying to explain to them, and it's not like, there's evolution works in mysterious ways, and things are being used for the growth of our spirit and the changes that we're seeing. And that's how a tadpole became a human, changes of the chemistry and the environment and the oxygen levels and how the cells communicate. Well, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I mean, I would do this all over again. If I had hindsight and say, would you transition? If you had a chance to do a do-over, would you transition? And I would definitely transition again and again and again, because this has been the most amazing experience that I've ever had. It has allowed my spirit to grow. It has allowed me to know who my true friends are, and it's allowed me to know who loves me unconditionally or not. And I think it's a beautiful experience that we're taking back to source,
So gender dysphoria is certainly not reducible to any single cause, chemical or otherwise. Indeed, there are several psychological correlates. These include any kind of trauma experienced during childhood. Another possible factor is abusive parenting.
And a lot of things, as I've spoken in the past, could be responsible for our who we want to go to bed with, how do we identify. I mean, we are very complex humans. Humans are just very complex species, and everything's set in motion, and the development of our nervous system, how we react to certain things. Do we get anxious? Do we get depressed? Do we develop some sort of trauma if we have mother issues or father issues? If we have siblings issues, all of this could play a major role. But it's not the be all end all. I mean, like I said, to me, this is an amazing experience. And although right now we're not living in such great times because the powers to be who are anti anything that is not fit perfectly in a little box, they think that we're an abomination and we're Baphomet and all that stuff. But I have news for them. We are actually the actual true plan of the prime creator source.
Now, there are so many stigmas that come with not operating within the gender box that you have been told that you are a part of. And that varies from culture to culture on this planet. And we see it more evidenced in a lot of Western societies that have traditional Catholic or, Abrahamic beliefs actually, as well, and Muslim and Islam and stuff like that. We have these stereotypes of masculinity and femininity that must be followed. There are, these stipulations that are generations old that really are attached to a lot of religious observance, and expectations are meant to be adhered to, because if you don't, then there is a consequence. There is a price to pay. And what I found is that whenever any one of us chooses to not adhere to that,
right,
we find ourselves outside of the norm.
Yeah, and we're booted out from friend groups, from family groups, from the typical societal dance that we do, because we were almost like, I don't know if anyone ever watched the movie Midnight Express, where the one guy in prison started going counterclockwise, where they were all walking around the same, and everybody was getting very upset at him, and they were like, no, you're walking the wrong way. When people decided to do something totally different than what is expected of them, the peanut galleries get very upset, and then they don't like it, and they want to control it, because they have, it's racism, it's all sorts of different things boiled into one.
I mean, for some of us, it's like this innate sense of not feeling comfortable doing life in that way, that makes us feel as if we don't fit in, or if we were to express our true person, then we would be mocked or ridiculed. And so many of us go and hide, away from being able to express completely who we are.
Exactly. Well, real as the psychological pathways may be, they do not invalidate or even weaken the hormone disruptive theory. Indeed, they suggest a similar nexus in brain development. Stress hormones also affect gene expression and have far-reaching consequences for subsequent psychological development, in addition to gender identity.
The role of industrial toxins in disrupting human brain development surfaces in reduced IQ scores for children raised in lead-polluted inner cities. Other heavy metal pollutants produce similar consequences. So it is worth asking how important hormone disruptors are as a threat to human happiness and fertility.
And we're seeing a lot of like decrease in sperm counts, which we kind of touched base last week. We're seeing a lot more couples having to go for fertility treatment because they're not getting pregnant, and you have to wonder what's going on here. And then we're seeing a lot of individuals not even wanting to have babies. It's like women are waiting till they're in their late 30s to start a family. They go out and they do their career, and it's almost like they don't want to do it. I just read something.
Don't want to get married.
Yeah, I just saw the other day that there's this new way now of actually bringing life without actually having intercourse, and there's like some sort of like I don't know, like with cells and genes and stuff, and they could just create it in a petri dish. I mean, and I don't know who's going to carry it. I didn't read the article fully, but there's a lot of changes coming, and I know people don't do well with change, but it's one of those things, either you get used to it and deal with it, or you're just going to go mad, So let's see here. Yeah, go ahead.
The age of chemistry versus health and reproduction. Researchers are beginning to recognize, based on limited available evidence, that the chemical environment is one of many available explanations for gender dysphoria in modern environments.
On the other hand, this phenomenon is a canary in the coal mine, offering yet one more clue that we are endangering our health and well-being through incautious acceptance of modern material that pose endocrine threats.
The semblance of comfort and convenience that products such as plastic wrapping and cosmetics present is the sheep's clothing beneath which makes major threats to our species. For if hormone disruptors affect gender orientation and gender dysphoria, we can be sure that they are a clear and present danger to reproduction and the long-term viability of our species.
So, I mean, that's one explanation, and then I'm sure that a lot of the Christians don't want to hear that explanation. They don't care for it too much anyway, because they believe we're sinners and we're doing something that goes completely against the plan of their God. And, I'm sure their God had a plan to get us to multiply, because he wanted more and more slaves and more individuals to worship him, and more sacrifices and the lovely smell of burnt flesh that he so likes so much, crazy stuff. But I know for myself, and I can't speak for everyone, that the cause of gender dysphoria, that mismatch between the messages that we're getting in our brain that tells us who we are and what we're looking in the mirror. That's why I wrote the book, The Mirror Makes No Sense, because, you look in the mirror and you're like, this is not how I'm supposed to look. But the messages that are being sent from the brain to the remaining receptors in your body, it's not communicating, and that a lot of times is triggered, by some sort of, either your mom took some sort of medication, like I know mine took anti-miscarriage. I know that many women in Puerto Rico and in the islands were being experimented with, and they were given birth control and all sorts of different things. And
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know there's a gap between my sister and my birth, and my mom had my sister like in the 60s, in 1962, I think it was.
Mhm.
And she didn't have me till 1970. So in between that time, there must have been something that kept her from getting pregnant, and I'm sure that she probably took DES in order
It was,
to keep pregnancies down.
yeah, and they were giving like candies during that time, and people were tricked and told that this was safe, and this could be one of the reasons why we are seeing such an increased amount of gender confused individuals, or people that just don't align with how they're supposed to be. And I say, what's wrong with that? Why can't you express as you so wish, instead of having to be the perfect little girl, the perfect little boy? It's like, it's your canvas. You get to choose what you paint on it.
And I know a lot of people don't like to hear about the atrocities committed by this country and what it's responsible for, but we just watched a documentary. It talked about the human zoo that
Yes,
went
and I
on.
shared it. It's on must watch here on the description area.
And basically, there were laws of sterilization in this country because there were certain people that believed in purifying the races to the degree that they thought that certain races were inferior to the white race. And so they allowed for certain treatments to be done on certain population groups. And I know that people probably have heard of this, the sickle cell, you know, what was it
Anemia.
when the men were exposed to
Syphilis. Yeah.
Actually, they were exposed to syphilis, and they were never told because they were part of an experiment.
Yeah.
I mean, this country has done experiments on population groups, and unfortunately, the islands of Cuba, the island of Puerto Rico, the island of Dominican Republic,
all the islands, all the Caribbean
these islands
yeah.
were like these laboratories where people would try things from this country, chemical compounds that they would give to the women to sterilize them, for instance.
Yeah.
And this is a very real part of why a lot of people in the islands where we come from, that there's a large LGBT representation.
Large, very large.
I mean, I have a cousin who actually has two sons that are both gay.
Yeah.
And these things are not just because it could also be because of the gender,
right.
Endocrine-disrupting chemicals and things that they give our moms. And
it doesn't mean that it has to be pathologized. It's just an explanation of what could have possibly taken place. And, again, there's nothing wrong with being trans, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with being gay. It's our canvas, and we paint on it what we wish. A lot of people don't really understand what gender dysphoria is, right? And And I guess it can mean different things for different people, because I don't like to use absolutes to define things or bring a definition that one size fits all, because we're all very different. We're all very unique. What I do know is living with gender dysphoria is really challenging for a lot of people. A lot of people, especially now that you know that there's something that can be done about it. In the past, we had dysphoria. We didn't feel good in our own bodies, in our own skin. And there was nothing we could do because there was no solution. But now that there's a solution, it's really hard not to be able to do something about it. Maybe this is one of the reasons we're seeing so much rise in it as well, is because people go, hey, I could change myself, right? So in a lot of people, this distress, this dysphoria can cause a lot of distress and anxiety. Gender dysphoria is an incongruency or a confliction between the gender and individuals assigned at birth. And I know they hate that word assigned, but they do assign that at birth. I mean, they're not checking your chromosome. There's a lot of individuals that chromosomes don't match their assigned birth and the gender with which they identify.
For those in our communities who experience gender dysphoria, there is likely a strong desire to rid oneself of dysphoria.
Some folks may be able to reduce their gender dysphoria entirely or almost completely, while most folks will deal with gender dysphoria in some capacity throughout their life.
How we respond to gender dysphoria can alleviate some of the distress and make it more manageable.
So, manifestation of gender dysphoria is manifested in different ways. Body dysphoria, discomfort with one's body; social dysphoria, discomfort with gender roles and expectations and the way one's gender is perceived; and there's spiritual dysphoria, a core sense of knowing one's gender and how it's different than one's gender assignment; and emotional dysphoria, distressing feelings that arise in relation to one's current gender experience.
Approaches to harm reduction. The framework of harm reduction comes from substance use treatment communities. Establish tools aimed to create reasonable goals and steps to reduce distress and harm. Taking a harm reduction approach to gender dysphoria will look different for each person. Folks can individualize their harm reduction coping tools by experimenting and trying different strategies depending on the dysphoria manifestation.
And it says here certain tools may work better on some days than others, and can be helpful to have a variety of alleviating and soothing strategies to try when gender dysphoria comes up. And again, it's all so very neurologically controlled. It's like many of us who identify as transsexuals have neurodivergence. Now, this is not like means that you're crazy or anything like that. Our nervous system got affected, maybe because of the different hormonal bathing that took place. So our nervous system doesn't work like the quote unquote typical nervous system. So finding your community, your safe place. This is so very important, especially this day and age. For some, finding specific communities and spaces where we feel safe to wear clothes aligned with our gender identity may be harm reducing when we do not feel it safe to do so at work.
For others, seeking out trans or queer specific events or groups aligned with the religion we practice may help maintain connection to a religious or spiritual practice, which may have also caused us harm due to our gender identity.
Maybe we seek our queer identified or affirming medical providers because it has been a while since we have been to the doctor or office, and many trans identifying individuals don't go to doctors because they don't treat us the way that we should be treated. We get looks, we get misgendered. I mean, and now boy, now the tables are really turning.
Grounding in times of anxiety. For many, gender dysphoria is a constant gender noise. And those of you who've experienced that noise know exactly what we're talking about. Or anxiety that is dysregulating and makes it difficult to function. I know I experienced that prior to transitioning. It was just so dysregulating. The constant back and forth in the brain, it was just this battle, and it was just this constant state of like,
Angst.
yeah, I mean,
It's an
angst
angst.
and a very discomforting feeling,
Because you're
painful.
fighting with yourself. You want to be what everyone else wants you to be. You don't want to feel abandoned, alone. You don't want to feel like a freak show, and that's what a lot of people make us feel, when we're not even seen as human. So it can be helpful to have grounding tools when we are heightened or disassociated. Grounding tools help us regulate and anchor into the present moment when we are experiencing overwhelming feelings.
There's limitless possibilities for individualizing grounding tool. Examples include playing a favorite comforting song, or taking a walk in nature and listening to the birds, taking a hot or cold shower, self-soothing talk to ease anxious thoughts, meditating, that's a big one, or a selfie photo shoot where you feel super cute.
And
I would recommend meditating.
yeah, and I understand, when someone initially transitions, they become so addicted to taking selfies because it's like you're trying to find, that a perfect picture that depicts who you feel inside, and you finally get to see your creation in front of you. And that is the best feeling ever. That as you're evolving, as you're developing, as you're changing, and you're like, again, your canvas, you've seen your painting. People make fun of us, and they misgender us, and they, don't use the name that we transition to just to be spiteful. And they don't understand. They don't even have the capacity to put themselves in our shoes to feel what we're feeling. Instead, they just want to ridicule and make fun of, and literally try to destroy us. And I just wonder if they could just get a glimpse of that feeling, like literally get to feel that anguish, that pain that we have gone through, instead of ridiculing us. I think that they would be kinder. But I don't think they can't correlate what's actually going on in our minds and in our hearts, and how we feel, like how they make fun of Dylan all the time. And my heart breaks for her because Dylan is really trying everything she possibly can to get people to like her. And it's just, no matter what she does, she just gets bombarded.
Yeah, from the inside as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Grounding tools help us regulate and anchor into the present moment when we are experiencing overwhelming feelings.
So
Be,
be
Go ahead.
be patient, be kind to yourself. It is so important that when gender dysphoria comes up, that we are kind to ourselves. The world around us shifts and changes constantly, and when we feel dysphoric due to our environment, there might be little we can do in the moment to prevent it. But we can remember that healing and growth are not linear, and treat our inner thoughts with compassion.
We can try to reduce dysphoria as much as possible where we can, and use grounding tools and self compassion to work through the times we have less control.
So, this could also work for those of you, and this article was done by, there's two different resources, and I've also placed it on the description area. 20 small things to do when gender dysphoria gets you down, and 25 things to do to make my body dysphoria smaller and quieter. Because it's rough, it's really, really rough to have to deal. And the article was written by Mika Ria. Um, it's it can be a very lonely world. It could also be a world of confusion because you try to fight these feelings. You really, like, before I transitioned, I really like put all the pros and the cons, and really try to feel, okay, well, what is it going to be like? How am I going to navigate this world? How are people going to treat me? Am I going to lose my family? Am I, you get all these thoughts racing in your head, and then add insult to injury, you get people that make you question yourself. And there's just not enough kindness out there, that to help individuals, especially the youth, that right now are having such a hard time, especially with all the what's the word I'm looking for, obstacles that are being put in front of them. It's it's important to have self care. And I was going to say, and also those of you that have detransitioned, you need self care. You don't need to be taken by the hand by some political propaganda, some Christians or any other type of religiosity that are trying to use you as a pawn for their message. You need self care. You need to be gentle with yourself.
And they'll run you into the ground to accomplish what they want to get done. As you have seen, as many of you are experiencing fatigue at this very moment, that you're just tired of the fight. You're just tired of like having to wave the flag of like anti-trans and going here to there and we'll fly you out here to testify against this group and we'll have you testify here, and you're finding yourselves running yourselves ragged because you realize that the fact is these people don't care about you. They're not interested in your well-being. They're interested in the show that you provide for them. They're interested in your ability to get them what they want. And that has been to change laws in this country. And for that, they have been successful,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, but what goes up must come down, and eventually everything will balance itself out. But what's most important is for you all, transitioners, detransitioners, everyone that is in this particular space right now that is exhausting, that is debilitating, that is disease causing, to take time for yourself, to meditate, to engage in activities that's going to bring you peace, and it's going to like allow you to know that you're going to be all right, that no matter what you did and no matter what regrets you may have, you're going to be all right, because you're not your body. You're not your body at all. And for those of you who are transitioning and are really going through a lot, because transition takes a load on your body. It really does. I mean, you're putting new chemicals, new hormones that your body's not used to. You're getting looked at by people, especially in the beginning, until you finally start to be more in yourself. Don't think of it as passing. I think of it as being more in yourself, that you're owning who you are, and you're not walking around with a billboard um, showing this fear, that the questioning, do I pass, don't I pass, that kind of thing. Don't worry about that. Just live in your space. Be the best you that you can be, and everyone else will follow suit, because that's very important.
And I think one of the most important takeaways is the fact that whether a person is gender queer, whether they're trans, whether they're expressing in a masculine way or a feminine way, and it doesn't match the societal standards, people just have this, they should have the decency to just respect others for where they are and who they are,
Right.
regardless of how they look, regardless of what they wear, and not be so quick to judge. But unfortunately, we come from a culture that their God judges everything and everyone, has a judgment because, their God says it's appointed for man once to die and then the judgment. It's like everybody is going to be judged according. So here we have a society that's been built on that premise of
principle.
judgment.
And it doesn't do anything to judge people, because all you do is make people uneasy. People just have low self-esteem because of it. They second guess their actions. And then we have a society that is the way the society is right now, very violent, very materialistic. It's sad, because we could live in such a better world where money doesn't drive everything, that it's more of the technology and the things that make life easier for all of us, so that we don't have to till the soil 8 hours a day and sweat away and be slaves to these corporations that really don't care about you. They care about the product that you're producing for them so they can get richer. while they're paying you peanuts and you barely live anymore. So one of the things I wanted to point out with this current climate and conspiracies to make people upset and get them out to vote for the Republican Party, that's what's happening right now, is the notion that children's sex are being changed.
That there are literal sexual reassignment surgeries happening to toddlers.
I mean, I'm sure that would, that's why people are getting pissed off. Let me assure you, folks, no children's genitalia are being mutilated, changed, touched. All these children, are getting, and in some cases they're just transitioning socially, is puberty blockers to buy them some time. Now we know that all medication, everything from the fluoride that you brush your teeth with, have some sort of side effect. Everything, because your body's natural. So you put something chemical in your body, you're going to have a side effect. But we all know the side effects and the risks, and we take these risks because it gives us something that we want. So unless you're a parent of a trans child and you are living with this child that is literally in pain because they don't want to be who their body tells them they are, then I suggest that you just take a back seat and let the parent and the doctor deal with the situation. This is not a place for politics. This is not a place for the church. This is not a place for busybodies and nosy guts, to stick your nose in everything and try to make life harder for those that are trying to find their peace and live their lives. So I don't know if I'm going to read all of this, but
contrary to popular belief these days, just like they say kitty litter boxes are being used for kids who want to, use a bathroom as a cat. That's not true.
Yeah.
No toddlers are getting gender affirming surgeries. That the Associated Press's assessment is that information is false.
Yeah. So if you're trying to fight this battle based on the conspiracies that you're hearing and you're all concerned and think that, they're coming after your children, that is a lie. If you have a trans kid, you'll know it because that kid will tell you that they're unhappy, and that's what these parents have had to deal. They've had to literally, their worlds have been placed upside down because their kid now dominates the life. And you say, well, who's the parent? Let me tell you, until you're facing this, you have no room to talk. I know because I dealt with a group of individuals who had a lot of young gender confused kids. And this was like 12 years ago. Okay. This was happening. And now I'm sure there's a lot more because now there's just this evolution that's happening. Kids learn, they know how to use an iPhone. They know how to use a computer from the time they step out of their mother's womb. So this is nothing being programmed. Kids aren't being programmed or seduced by anyone. This is their own doing, and their parents are having to deal with this. But rest assured, no one is performing sex reassignment surgeries on infants. That is just a bold lie. Bold lie,
And they're using it for maximum advantage because just the thought of that makes people's skin crawl.
Yeah. Of course. I mean, who wouldn't? The thought of having an infant, have their genitalia altered, yet they do it for intersex individuals, or if they have a bad castration or whatever else, not castration, what's that called? Circumcision, which is pretty much, that's barbaric in and of itself. Yet no one's on an uproar about that.
Yeah.
What
is happening though are these children, some of them are allowed to socially transition at a young age, and basically people are in arms are upset all about that too. They're like, these kids shouldn't be transitioning at 6 or 7. I mean, they get upset, they get all involved as if it's their child.
I know.
And it's like, these parents, there's reasons that they're allowing their child to transition socially, which isn't hurting anyone.
Well, they're being good parents because they don't want their kids to suffer. When you are dealing with a child that from the time it walks out of your womb, it's telling you they're a boy, not a girl, or vice versa. And they're constantly, and it's not about the toys and it's not about anything superficial like that. It's an inner knowing that those of you who don't have gender dysphoria wouldn't understand because you never experience it. Teens, however, are actually getting like the top surgeries. We don't see very many individuals going full gamut for the lower surgery. That's a lot more complicated, a lot more expensive, and is not something that's generally done right away. It's usually after the 20 something, even some individuals wait longer. I know I have a friend of mine who has been trans for around the same time as I have, and they're just recently got their bottom surgery. And, but that's, that he's an adult, and, everyone is entitled to make their decision after they're a certain age, but please stop spreading lies regarding children getting surgeries and so forth and so on.
And that goes for you people that are on Twitter or on Instagram, Facebook, making these outlandish claims and, saying things that just repeats what other people are putting out there and copying, pasting lies. That doesn't help anyone. That certainly doesn't help the kids that are affected.
Exactly. And our last little topic we're going to talk today about is a new theory about vibration. Now, many people think that everything in life is exactly what they see. They look at a table and they see the table has legs and it's made out of wood, and they touch it, they knock on wood and all that stuff. But there's so much that we as humans are not privy to and we don't understand. Everything is energy. Einstein said everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not a philosophy. This is physics. This is science for those science believers out there. Back in the hippy dippy days, when they were all about vibes, man. They were all about vibration. So there is actual science to all this, and there's a reason behind this, and there's a reason why we're changing as a species, because as the Earth moves and it rotates, and the other planets and the other universes are also moving and changing at the same time, vibrations are changing, and that brings a change in our reality. So why are some things conscious and other apparently not? Is a rat conscious, a bat, a cockroach, a bacteria, an electron?
These questions are all aspects of the ancient mind-body problem, quote unquote, which has resisted a generally satisfying conclusion for thousands of years.
The mind-body problem enjoyed a major rebranding over the last 2 decades and is generally known as the hard problem of consciousness, usually capitalized nowadays after the New York University philosopher David Chalmers coined this term in a now classic 1995 paper in his 1996 book, The Conscious Mind in Search of a Fundamental Theory.
Fast forward to the present era, and we can ask ourselves now, did the hippies actually solve this problem? My colleague Jonathan Schooler of the University of California, Santa Barbara, and I think they effectively did, with the radical intuition that it's all about vibrations, man.
Over the past decade, we have developed a resonance theory of consciousness that suggests that resonance, another word for synchronized vibration, is at the heart of not only human consciousness, but physical reality more generally.
So how were the hippies right? Well, we agree that vibrations and resonance are the key mechanism behind human consciousness, as well as animal consciousness more generally. And as I'll discuss below, that they are the basic mechanism for all physical interactions to occur.
All things in our universe are constantly in motion. vibrating. Even objects that appear to be stationary are in fact vibrating, oscillating, resonating at various frequency. Resonance is a type of motion characterized by oscillation between two states, and ultimately all matter is just vibration of various underlying fields.
An interesting phenomenon occurs when different vibrating things slash processes come into proximity. They will often start after a little time to vibrate together at the same frequency. They sync up, in a other way of saying it, sometimes in ways that can seem mysterious. This is described today as the phenomenon of spontaneous self-organization.
So, examining this phenomenon leads to potentially deep insights about the nature of consciousness and about the universe more generally. So, all things resonate at certain frequencies. Stephen Strogatz provide various examples from physics, biology, chemistry, and neuroscience to illustrate what he called sync or synchrony in his 2003 book called Sync.
Including fireflies of certain species start flashing their little fires in sync in large gatherings of fireflies in ways that can be difficult to explain under traditional approaches.
Large-scale neuron firings can occur in human brains at specific frequencies, with mammalian consciousness thought to be commonly associated with various kinds of neuronal synchrony.
Lasers are produced when photons of the same power and frequency are emitted together.
And the moon's rotation is exactly synced with its orbit around the Earth, such that we always see the same face.
Resonance is a truly universal phenomenon and at the heart of what can sometimes seem like mysterious tendencies towards self-organization.
So let's see here. Pascal Fries, a German neurophysiologist with the Ernst Strungmann Institute, has explored in his high-sided work over the last 2 decades the ways in which various electrical patterns, specifically gamma, theta, and beta waves, work together in the brain to produce the various types of human consciousness.
These names refer to the speed of electrical oscillations in the various brain regions, as measured by electrodes placed on the outside of the skull. Gamma waves are typically defined as about 30 to 90 cycles per second, hertz. Theta as a 4 to 7 hertz rhythm, and beta as 12.5 to 30 hertz. These aren't hard cutoffs, they're rules of thumb, and they vary somewhat in different species.
So theta and beta are significantly slower than gamma waves, but the three work together to produce or at least facilitate the exact relationship between electrical brain patterns and consciousness. It's still very much up for debate, various types of human consciousness.
Fries calls his concept communication through coherence, or CTC for short. For Fries, it's all about neuronal synchronization. Synchronization in terms of shared electrical oscillation rates allows for smooth communication between neurons and groups of neurons. Without coherence, synchronization, inputs arrive at random phases of the neuron excitability cycle and are ineffective, or at least much less effective in communication.
So our resonance theory of consciousness builds upon the work of Fries and many others in a broader approach that can help to explain not only human or mammalian consciousness, but also consciousness more broadly. We also speculate metaphysically about the nature of consciousness as a more general phenomenon of all matter. So, we think we know things. We try to put everything in a little box. But quantum physics is something that has really changed the way scientists look at things, the way that people actually understand things.
People might be up in arms about the fact that there are more kids identifying in the LGBT spectrum, Q as well. But maybe it's because this is now in the collective consciousness of humanity more than it had been in the past. Like, past generations may not have really had that kind of corporeal experience of the mind, that it would actually be a part of the development of a person,
Definitely.
but now, it's like whoever broke the 4-minute mile or something like that, it took like hundreds of years to break the 4-minute mile. And then within like months,
Somebody
a bunch
else.
of
Yeah.
people had done it. So it's sort of like this collective consciousness thing where we have these kids who now are experiencing this because it's in the ether of our species.
It's in our consciousness, and it's like how we connect on the internet and how we tend to think of an idea all across the globe, and then somebody else thinks of that same idea, and before you know it, everyone's talking about the same thing. We're connected. We're so connected. It's kind of scary.
Or like if you simply go to a sporting event and there's this unseen energy called momentum.
Mm-hmm.
When a team starts to feel that momentum and then things start changing and going to the advantage of that team that's experiencing the momentum. That's why home field advantage is a thing for
the
teams that are competing.
So we're gonna not go too much into this, but when Einstein talks about matching the frequency, he means that everything we desire has a frequency set point. We don't think about it in those terms, but all beings, all things in the universe vibrate at a certain level.
You do on a daily basis. Sometimes you get angry, sometimes you feel bored. These vibratory rates are quite different from when you're ecstatic or when you're in joy. But one of the things that was really interesting last night was in one of the people who were demonstrating and showing at the Star Party, he took a picture of the bandwidth of a certain star. In this case, it was the star Sirius, and how it was composed of more hydrogen and it had less of the other elements, but that when he took pictures of certain other stars, that they were composed of different elements. So, that whole concept of like the spectrum
of light. Yeah. So I'm not suggesting, by the way, that when we feel something contrary to happiness that we shouldn't feel it. It's actually the opposite. Science has also shown that big feeling moves through our body and it's released within 90 seconds. So when something happens to us that triggers us, the initial tumult of emotion is over and gone within a minute or two. So feel it and then flush it.
But we instead hold on to it for days in our heads. We call up our friends and complain. We bitch to our parents. We get upset because of something completely unrelated that then sets us off again about something that happened a week or a year ago. We get stuck in patterns of thought about something and then get to regenerate that negative concept, that negative association with it.
And then continue to feel the same feeling that caused that anguish. And if you hold on to that feeling, every cell in your body feels what you're feeling. And this is why we get sick. This is where disease comes from. You're throwing everything out of balance. So this is the kind of frequency we want to work on changing. And it's possible. It requires awareness and a bit of work so that you don't get swallowed down the rabbit hole. But with patience and persistence, you will get better at it.
You can calm the mind that creates such turbulence in our hearts, because isn't our thoughts about things that upsets us and not the actual thing?
Think about it. It's your thought. The thought about whatever it is that upset you is just a thought. Why do you let a thought control your entire life? So work on the frequency first and observe how things slowly start to shift in relation to it. Relationships, opportunities, conversations, possibilities, information, your actual life itself.
You start to realize you do have a say in your own life. When you start to manage your own frequency, you'll stop expecting it and your happiness to be fulfilled by others. And that in itself becomes a much more liberating frequency. We let go of expectations and demands.
One of the things I like about Buddhism is that it teaches you Desire causes suffering. If you have no desires, there's no suffering. Because what happens when you can't get what you want? You get upset. So you learned to appreciate what you have. You live in the now. You don't have any expectations. So the only thing making you unhappy are your own thoughts. Change them.
When you do, you'll see that your frequency and your world will change too.
So again, I put this on the description area. This is really, really good information and a lot of great advice, especially in the world that we're living in right now. That is just crazy, crazy world that we're living in. All right, guys. So I'm going to thank you for tuning in yet again. If you guys have anything that you want us to talk about, either put it down in the comment section or shoot us an email at transitionradioshow@gmail.com. I think it's important for trans identified individuals to start really showing their positive side. You know, the world has seen a lot of negativity coming from our community, you know, and it's understandable. We've lived a life hidden for a long time, held on to these feelings and not really expressed ourselves. And you know, there's been a lot of negativity involved, and unfortunately, negativity breeds more negativity. We need to start changing that. We need to show the world that we are happy, productive human beings, that we do matter, and we have to lead by example.
Exactly.
You know, but please, guys, if you are a Christian or a conservative or you are some sort of gender crit, you know, stop waging war on us. Go within yourself and try to find out what is it in you that's being triggered by the Dylans, the other trans women that just rub you the wrong way. The whole concept of they use your bathroom or your locker room. Come on now. I mean, if a trans woman uses your locker room and the restroom, is because that's where they belong, because they transitioned and they're not trying to do anything other than the same thing you're doing in the bathroom and in that locker room. Have a little bit of humanity in you and stop this warring, because war doesn't bring peace. It's only going to make you sick. It's only going to make you get out of balance, and it's only going to tear your world apart. The more you try to hurt others, the more you hurt yourself.
You know, also sex segregated spaces like bathrooms in some countries in Europe aren't even a thing. They just use the bathroom, you know, men, women, they just use a WC.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that is the water closet.
Yeah.
That's what they do. And, you know, you go walking down the streets of Amsterdam, you're not going to find yourself with a men's and women's restroom. It's just a bathroom.
Mm-hmm. And you all go in there to do one thing, and that's relieve yourself of number one, number two, you know, that's it. Don't make a big deal out of something that doesn't need to be made a big deal about.
And honestly, how many of you actually use a locker room anyway?
I know.
You know, many of you don't even exercise. You would never touch the door of a gym. So, you know, it's kind of...
It's just political. It's just, you know...
It just makes it so that demonization can happen, you know, because it's like, oh, you're venturing into our spaces and stuff. I've yet to see someone indecently exposing themselves in a bathroom. Yeah. You know, I know they say it happens, but in my experience, and I've been in other gyms and stuff, I haven't seen it. No. You know.
Yeah, it's political. It gets people riled up, and some people, they're so miserable, they love to make other people miserable. You know, they live on Twitter fighting with everyone and finding ways, how can I upset a trans woman or a trans man today? And I say, shame on you. You know, need to work on your own issues, on your own lack of spirituality, lack of balance. You know, find something that makes you happy. And if you are incapable of being nice to someone, that old saying, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. You know, just try to live your life and let others live theirs. And let's try to find some harmony. The world's already in chaos as it is. We don't need any more chaos caused. Anyway, we'll see you soon again, possibly next week. since we had the show tonight. We won't have one tomorrow, but thank you guys for tuning in.
Yes.
Again, if you have any questions or anything that you want us to cover, leave us a note down here on the comment section or send us an email to transitionradioshow@gmail.com. Hope you guys have a great remainder of the evening. Don't sweat the small stuff, and be well. We love you guys. Always love yourself.